we go. Another week in unison doing on the podcast. Respect. After a couple of years, we're getting there. We're finally getting in the groove of it. Welcome, everyone. Good evening, Mahongo. It's good, nice, snappy. Respect it. Welcome to the podcast.
We Shout out if you comment quickly.
Yeah. If this is your first time, this is not your first time. Welcome to Watch the Words. I'm Eamon. This is Warner. We do this every single Sunday.
Hola.
We've been doing it every single Sunday since 2020, start of 2020.
Somewhere there.
With a few breaks in between, obviously, because it's important to rest. And we talk about the Bible, Jesus, God, all that good stuff. And it's good fun. If you are here, say hello. Let us know who's here. So you see Ezekiel, Mahongo, the snappy comments. I love it. I respect it. That's what we're here for. And Marilyn as well. If you're listening later on as well, still say hello. Give us a review. Just give us a 5-star review. Just saying hello. That'd be nice. Get us further up the rankings and everything like that. But
you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, stuff like that.
iHeartRadio.
Most places where you can, where you get your podcasts, you can listen to us. So maybe you listen to a bit of this, and you think, "Oh, I can't finish watching it." Pop the podcast on. Do you know what I mean? Go about your day.
Yeah, and obviously there's years of content in there as well. You can go back and watch. Listen to. And it's good content. I must say. Obviously, I'm biased, but I think it's good quality.
Goes all the way back to 3rd of September 2019. Just had a look. So,
wow.
Yeah. If you want to know about hell, it's there.
That's the first one we did. We don't start light. We just dive straight in the deep end. Love that. Okay. Anyway, Warner, tell the people, how's your week been out of 10? Any highlights? What's been going on?
I'm going to say my week was a 7. I don't remember much of it. So I'm assuming it was a good week. From what I remember, it was a good week. Nothing bad happened.
Yeah.
So it was a good week. Do you know what I mean? Hey, one of the highlights, we started painting some of the parts of the wall that got done. And it just the house feels so much better when it starts to look less like a building site and more like a house.
Which way have you painted?
So we're gonna be. The door where the dining room is, not dining room. You know what I mean? Open space. Yeah. So that wall there, going to the kitchen, those smaller bits about there. Yeah, but what I want to get is those long pole things. I saw a TikTok where this guy was doing the proper technique. You've got to go up, down, something like that. Anyway,
honestly,
so that's my plan to do that.
TikTok, if honestly, guys, I don't know. I don't even know what you have to do to search for that. But it's basically this guy on TikTok who basically paints a whole wall within seconds. He's got some really nice roller on a stick, and he just has this sort of technique of going up and then diagonal or something. It's weird, but he does the whole wall in seconds, and it's mental. I'm watching it because I remember just sort of spending all day just sort of up and down, but he does it so quick.
Yeah,
I love it.
That's been my week. It's been good. How about you, mate?
I'll have to give it a 10. A 10.
Right.
No real sort of highlights, but no sort of real low lights. Do you know what I mean? Or down points.
Yeah.
I think it was just like a standard.
Oh, actually, yours should be above it. Yours should be above a 10.
Oh, okay. I mean, if this is the thing you think referring to, my team.
Yeah. Yes.
My boys. My boys. My Cincinnati Bengals. If you don't know, American football team, last week they won their first playoff game in 31 years.
Ooh, that's older than me.
Years.
That's just about older than me.
And then, last night they played in this sort of the quarterfinals, if you want to call it that, and against a really tough team. People were writing us off, and we won again. So now we're in the semi-finals. buzzing for it, happy for it. Because this team, ever since I've supported them, they've been rubbish.
They've been really bad.
Really bad. Really bad.
And everyone was like, oh, why did you pick this team of all the teams you could have picked?
Yeah. And you know what? I stuck with them, and they do me proud this year. It's really nice. Man United are doing bang average. So it's just nice to get a nice few cheeky wins in,
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a highlight. I'll give that a highlight. So now we're in the semi-finals, which is next week. So next Sunday, I'll either be crying. I don't know if they're playing Saturday or Sunday, to be honest. But if they are playing Saturday, I'll be coming here crying or, buzzing.
Crying because of joy or despair.
Yeah, it's going to be. I'm feeling it already. I'm feeling the pressure already, but it's fine. I've never been in this situation with this team before. That's what's.
It's Sunday.
Oh no! Is it late kickoff? Really?
It's Sunday 8:00, so you'll be able to watch it live. But obviously, we won't know whether you're in. We won't know your reaction until the week after.
Great.
And then obviously that's Super Bowl. That yeah.
But anyway, that's gonna be a highlight. Well, no, I'm nervous now. I'm nervous about it. It's in my head. Anyway, let's move on. Let us know. Let us know in the comments how your week's been, or let us know any highlights. What's been going on? Because I'm genuinely, I'm interested. You know what I mean? I want a bit of interaction.
Hey, none of that fakery here, guys.
Yeah,
genuine interest. Do you know what I mean?
This is real interaction. This is, guys. You don't get this anywhere else. You don't get this on ITV. This is real interaction. Anyway.
Whoa!
I don't know.
Why going for ITV's that way? You don't get this. You don't get this on those broadcasting services. It's the real deal.
Diving into what we're talking about, as you guys will know, this month we've basically been doing what's called the shred, reading the whole Bible in a month. So January 1st, Genesis chapter 1, and then by the 30th, we should be finished Revelation, which is so the whole Bible in a month, about 40 chapters a day, 2.5 hours of reading at my pace. It's designed so it's the same amount of reading each day rather than the same amount of chapters. So then, because obviously some days will be longer and shorter then, so you can sort of, fit it in and do whatever you need to do. And this week we're on week 3. I know it says on the title part 2, but we're on part 3. Yeah, it's fine. Well, we're on part 3, and Warner, why don't you give us an overview of what we've been reading in the past week?
Yeah, sure thing. So we start as we ended. So we ended just at the end of Proverbs and Ecclesiastes, which if you've not read Ecclesiastes, that's Solomon at the end of his life, after he's done some really good things and then basically fell off the wagon, and messed up a lot, and he's effectively a bit of a miserable guy.
Yeah,
and he's given his last bits of wisdom before he dies, effectively.
Yeah.
So that's where you get stuff like everything is meaningless, all that jazz. Do you know what I mean? Stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's a little bit whiny, but he's been through it, to be fair. And then you get so then we start the 17th of Jan.
Yeah.
Song of Songs. And then the bulk of it is all Isaiah, basically.
Yeah.
Which is Isaiah is very important. He was a very important prophet.
Yeah.
And a lot of the I will say a lot of the significant prophecies.
Yeah.
And they're not insignificant prophecies, but some have more weight than others, I would say. A lot of them come there. So it starts off with Isaiah 1 and 2, do you know what I mean? That's cornerstone prophecies.
Yeah.
So you've got Isaiah, and then 18th of Jan, end of Isaiah. Basically, it's all of Isaiah because Isaiah's super long. So long. So you've got him, talking to a few people, talking a lot about Zion.
Yeah.
As well. A lot of words about Israel.
Yeah.
So a lot of the people of God content can be found in Isaiah. Both good elements and bad elements. And then you begin Jeremiah, the end of that. So, yeah, again, prophesying to the people of Israel, who at this moment in time are just like, they're basically doing whatever they want.
Yeah.
So Jeremiah has been called by God to go and speak to Israel. And his history is effectively being that one guy in the room that's like, hey, don't do that. And they just do it. And him getting fed up. And then he's like, oh, I want to quit. And then he keeps going. And then he tells them. And so that's effectively his arc is just like, he has to do it because he can't not do it. Because that's how much he loves God. But he's just super annoyed because he's literally like, please stop doing all this stuff. And they're just like, yeah, cool. We're not going to do that because we really like the way that we're doing it ourselves. So here, like in Jeremiah, you have some of those. I don't know if it's like creative prophecy is how you describe it, but like it's like stuff where it's more practical. Like God's like, hey, go get this belt, put it around your waist. Don't let it touch water, etc., etc. And then like what happens with the belt is becomes God uses that to explain what he wants to say to his people, warning them about disaster and all this different stuff. And so you have like those type of examles.
You know I mean? That makes sense.
And then you have some of the false prophets coming about who were very prevalent at the time, who would basically just go to the people of Israel and say, don't worry about it. Everything's fine. You're doing great. Just keep going. Do whatever you want. Don't worry about it. No harm's going to come to you. And basically going directly against what demonstrative prophecies. Thank you so much for the demonstrative prophecies.
That's good.
So you get some there's some in the New Testament as well. So when Paul, that guy comes and does Paul's, what is it? I can't remember what it is now. Anyway, we'll get to that next week when we've done the New Testament. I was like, oh, we won't have time, but I was like, oh yeah, it's coming up this week. So then we end Jeremiah, and then when are we? 20th of Jan. It's like the rest of Jeremiah. You've got Lamentations, which is like just full on like. This is a very depressed individual who basically has lost all hope, and they've just written it down and they've expressed it. And so that's Lamentations, and then we have Ezekiel, which is a lot of visual prophecy here. So there's a lot of, hey Ezekiel, what have you seen? And a lot of imagery used to explain the word. Whatever God wants to communicate to his people. And then 21st of Jan, you have the rest of Ezekiel then. So this is the book where you have like, I was walking and it was da-da-da. And like, these are the measurements of the thing. And it was, and like, this means, blah, blah. That's what's going down in Ezekiel. That's basically that whole day is Ezekiel. And then the 22nd of Jan, you then have the last chapter of Ezekiel, because that's how long it is. It needed basically 2 chapters, 2 days worth to do it. And then you have Daniel, which has goes into a bit more in depth about some of the people who lived in Babylonian captivity. Obviously, you got the story of the lion's den, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the furnace. That one in particular is a very important story. There's fourth in the flame. And then later on, New Testament, we have the description of Jesus as having
feet of burnished
bronze, which you get in the furnace. And then you also have the description of the different kingdoms, etc., that are going to come up, and the prophecy of the kingdom of God will endure. and be greater than all the other kingdoms, rise up, etc., etc. And then Hosea, you have in there, which is a bit of a mad book where God basically, it's a life demonstrative prophecy. So God is like, hey, Hosea, I want to show Israel what they're doing to me. So go and marry a prostitute.
Yeah.
And it's effectively, Hosea's life becomes a word to Israel of God saying, look, like, this is like, what you're doing is not good. And this is how much I love you, that I keep wanting you back.
Yeah.
But you keep just going off with all these different cultures, all these different gods that you create for yourself. And then we have Joel, some stuff on judgment, a lot of stuff about locusts in there as well.
Holy Spirit,
and then you've got
Holy Spirit bit.
Yeah, Holy Spirit as well, of course. And then you've got Amos.
Yeah.
And then where are we? 23. That's basically it. That's basically
that's
it
pretty
for this week.
23.
Yeah. So, do we finish the Old Testament today?
Yeah.
Not quite.
Oh, is it tomorrow?
Oh no, we do.
Yeah, it's today.
Today's one.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. So, Eamon,
I think this is.
Are there any key parts that jumped out at you?
I think this part of the shred is quite an interesting one, because I think what it does is it kind of, you obviously, like, Sunday's just reading Ezekiel the whole day, but especially like today, I've already done today's reading, but like today, you're reading sort of Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi. Like, you're reading loads of different books, and I prefer that a little bit, because it kind of breaks it up a little bit. I think, you can sort of pause in between and kind of go, oh, interesting, cool, great stuff. So this is kind of a really interesting part, and I think one of the things that really stuck out, as I think, obviously, as you read Isaiah, it's very Jesus heavy. Obviously, the whole sort of Bible is, but in terms of, I think the prophecies in Isaiah are very, like, obvious. Do you know what I mean? Like, like some things you can read and you can kind of go, oh, like, and then someone explains to you, go, oh, I missed that. Do you know what I mean? Like,
that's Ezekiel. Ezekiel is that book. Is like, what does this wheel mean with the eyes, and like, they've got four faces and their wings are touching, and all that stuff.
It's a lot more. Whereas I feel like Isaiah, like, there's certain chapters in Isaiah reading, I'm like, yeah, this is nice. I was like, this is just Jesus. I'm like, it's like like it's like you've already, the ending's already been spoiled for you when you're reading it. Do you know what I mean? You're like, oh, I know what's coming. I know what's happening. I know what this is all going to be about. But I think one of the things that really sort of shines throughout this sort of section is there is a lot of judgment. Like, there's a lot of, stop being a mug. You're a mug. You're doing this wrong. You're doing that wrong. You need to change your ways. This is what's going to happen to you. There's a lot of kind of judgment in this, and as well as that, today's as well, which obviously sort of the end of the Old Testament. There's a lot of, you've done this wrong, but it's always got towards, like, to some of these books, towards the end of them, you always get like a restoration bit. It talks about there is judgment coming for what you've done, but ultimately, there's going to come a restoration, and there's going to come a restoring of you and your people and all these kind of things. And I think that's sort of the beautiful thing about it, is that it's not just punishment and it's not just judgment, but there's always a redemptive element towards it, of just being like, the reason why I'm doing this is because I love you, because I care. So it makes you think of a parent. You know, when your parent sort of punishes you, they're not going to punish you and just throw you in the bin and just go, see you later, mate.
Yeah, hopefully not.
Get in the green recycling bin, because that's what you're going to decompose, that kind of stuff. Do you know what I mean? It's not like that. It's they punish you, and they sort of, if you do something wrong, they're gonna punish you and do all these different things. But it's ultimately all with the purpose of teaching you and bringing you back into, and obviously keeping you in the family and everything like that, but and restore you. But ultimately, there has to come a punishment for what you've done. And I think that's one of the things that really sort of shines through these books, is the fact that God's kind of like, all right, guys, you're not really sort of sticking with the plan here. you're sort of veering off a little bit. You're doing some weird stuff. So there is going to come some punishment. There is going to come this, that, and the other. But ultimately, there's going to come a redemptive element of it. And it's sort of very much similar to like the book of Judges, for instance, which makes that very, very obvious, where it's like they would do right in the eyes of the Lord, and then they started to turn away, and then God raises up a judge, and this judge is there not to punish them, but to deliver them from what's going on with the people who have taken over them. And then they do they do what's good in the eyes of the Lord until that judge dies, and then they forget about everything and they go back. And it's just this endless cycle, really. And I mean, that's really sort of the whole sort of arc of the Israelites throughout the whole scriptures, really. It's just up and down, up and down, up and down. And I don't really have the patience I wouldn't have the patience for it if I was God. But, he's gracious enough
to say, exactly why you're not.
Exactly. But the thing is the fact that, throughout all the scriptures and here as well, that they just do stuff wrong. And God is like, do you know what? There's going to come some punishment, some bad things are going to happen, but ultimately here is some good stuff that's going to come out of this. And there is going to come a restoration, and there is going to come. And once you understand Jesus, once you understand the New Testament and you understand Jesus and who he is and what he came to do, etc., when you're reading these prophecies, you read it in the light of Jesus. So you see that these things are fulfilled in Jesus, fulfilled in what his ministry, fulfilled in what he's doing, rather than a physical land, or rather than a physical place or temple or whatever else is there. As you start to read these, because I mean, let's be honest. I mean, no one really just ventures into some of these like little prophets just for fun, do they? Like, I'll be honest. I don't really venture in there and go, do you know what? Let's do some reading today. Let's go to one of these really obscure. Let's go to Lamentations or something like that. But like, I think you can kind of be neglected when you're doing the shred, or when you're doing the Bible in a year, or whatever else. You really start to sort of see these things and go, oh, I see how Jesus is fulfilling that, or how Jesus has fulfilled that, or what's going to take place, and all this kind of stuff. And I think that's the best thing about this portion, is that you've seen a lot of prophecies, you've seen a lot of stuff like that you got to see. There's Jesus, there's what he's done, that's what he did here, that's what he's doing now, that's what Paul talks about here, or that's what Revelation. You start to piece all these things together. And I think, not that I needed more convincing anyway, but you start to get even more convinced that this isn't just a random collection of writings that people just, collected and went, you know what, they're all talking about the same things here. It's Holy Spirit inspired, and that there is this thread that's sort of coming through this. And it's one of the things that I keep sort of coming back to every single week when we're doing this, is that there is a thread that's going through as we're doing the shred and reading and understanding
the thread of things.
The shred. And ultimately that Jesus, that these prophecies, who other people may understand as being a restoration of a land, or restoration of a temple, or whatever else, that Jesus is, as we read it through the lens of understanding who Jesus is, of what he's done, and all these kind of things, we start to see how Jesus fulfills all these things, and it kind of gets you a bit excited. You know what I mean? You're reading it like, oh, okay, this is decent. This, like, come on, let's have it. Rather than just reading this king ruled for this long and he was really, really bad. Then this king came along and he ruled for this long and he was also really, really bad. And you're a bit like, oh, like this is great. This is good reading. Then when you get to but this bit kind of just excites me. I'm like, okay, we get into the real juice, and we get into the real meat of it. And some of the chapters in Isaiah are like just unreal. Like, you're reading them, I'm just like, this is just Jesus all over. Like, that's exactly who he is. That's exactly his character. That's his nature. That's what he did. That's what he did here. That's what he did there. And ultimately, like, I think just reading that this week kind of just got me excited. I was just like, yes, I'm here for it. Let's go. Nice. Jesus is doing these things, and he's fulfilling all these things that have been spoken about hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years before he was even around, before, before Mary and Joseph were around, all that kind of stuff. Like, it's just, I don't know, like, when I'm reading it, I'm just like, there's no way that someone can connect all these dots. Do you know what I mean? Like, when I'm thinking about it, I'm just like, there's no way Jesus sat down with his family and friends and stuff, went, right, okay, how are we going to convince the world that, I'm the Son of God? Okay, I have to do this, and this.
Yeah.
I think there's too much, and it's too interwoven and complicated for me to go, do you know what? he's got it. He must be ticking off a list here of things he just wrote down, things he just read. Like there's just so much going on here,
and so many of them are like are things that aren't like you couldn't be like, oh cool, let me schedule this in for like next Tuesday. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And a bunch of them are like about before he was born, where he'll be born,
the conditions of where
like
the world and stuff like that. There's so much around it. But and so when I'm reading these things, I'm like, yes, I'm more convinced than ever. And I am seeing that Jesus is fulfilling these things and has fulfilled some these things and things like that. And I think that's just, I don't know, it's just good, solid reading that. Do you know what I mean? I think that's probably the main thing that sort of stuck out. What about you, mate?
Nice. One of the things is that God's plan has been consistent, which is good. His plan has always been to live with his people.
Yeah.
And so, like, through all the different prophets, like, what always comes out is that God's ultimate plan is to live with his people. So when you have, like, all the prophecy about, like, the temple, like, God always says that I want to live with my people and for them to be able to live in my presence. And it's just, like, interwoven. So that there's no longer a separation of only certain people can come into my presence. Only those certain people can come at very certain times. Do you know what I mean? There's no negative consequence. Like his plan is just to be me and my people just living together, and we just do what we're doing. Do you know what I mean? Without all that ancillary damage and all that stuff. That's quite I think that's super encouraging. Do you know what I mean? Like at the end of the 100%. Day, God wants to live with you, and everything that He's done to this point, and will continue to do, is to get you to a point where you can live with Him. Do you know what I mean? So, like that's His ultimate goal, is that you and Him and us collectively, obviously, like can live together and spend eternity together. That's His motivation. Though. Yeah, like
that's bad. Like if you think about it, like he's God. Do you know what I mean? Like he doesn't have to. No. Like he doesn't need to, but he's chosen to. Like that's the mad thing.
And he probably, from a human point, he shouldn't. Do you know what I mean? Like in our thinking, we'd be like, the return. There is no return on investment on this.
100%.
Based off how one side has treated, like, me and Mercy, right? We found this show. Mercy found this show, I should say. Shout out. And it's called Couples Therapy. It's amazing. Season 1 and 2 on BBC iPlayer, and we're working through it. But it's literally so fascinating. It's literally these couples going through couples therapy.
Okay.
And you also get to see like the therapist debriefing with her therapist to help her like process the info. And you literally see like from their first session to their last session with this therapist. And as therapy goes, you know, it starts off quite surface level. And the therapist does an incredible job of like just asking the right questions, delving deeper. And suddenly, like all these issues that they're like, you see, like you start to realize, it's this thing from your childhood, or do you know what I mean? All this great stuff. But in that show, like there's certain people who within the first 5 minutes of the first episode, basically all of the internet, all of Twitter who had watched it were basically like writing this person off, saying he's a horrible person, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Because of like something he said, which I won't say. But he said something so selfish and so like highly egotistical that people just wrote him off and were like, this is bad. I don't know how they've been married for this long, but like he's got no interest in her as a human being. She's just like a thing. Like that's how that would be our advice to God. Do you know what I mean? Like if God was in couples therapy with humanity and we were like the therapist, we'd be like, look, God, this has been a highly abusive relationship. You've done everything that you can, and to this day, you know what I mean? They're still not all in.
Yeah.
But he's still like, I'm carrying on. And there's I think we read it this week. I can't remember if it was in here. or if it's somewhere else. Maybe I'm thinking of somewhere in New Testament, actually, because I think Paul might have said it. But it said that don't think that God is slow, something like this. I'm paraphrasing. Don't think that God is slow. He's being patient because he wants to give an opportunity to as many people as possible.
Ooh, yeah.
Because sometimes you can have this thought of like, God, you're taking ages. God, why are you not doing this? God, why are you not doing that? God, don't you see what the world's like? God, why don't you just sort it all out now?
Yeah, yeah.
And like he's going to, but a lot of the times when we say things like that, it's because we want it to be done. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But from God's point of view, God's saying, no, there's still more people who don't know me that I want to give an opportunity to know me.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to take my time because this isn't because we see it as like, we don't see the main moment of life as like Judgment Day. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we just see our life as this is the main part.
Yeah.
And so this takes up all our focus. So we want life to be comfortable now, but in God's perspective, like judgment is the final is the actual line. So his priority is minimizing the number of human beings that end up going to hell.
Yeah.
Like that's his goal. No human should go to hell. So he's going to give as much opportunity as possible for every human as possible to have a chance to not go to hell. Do you know what I mean? So that is that's that on that. And then the second one is that God restores purpose.
Ooh, that's a good one.
So you've got, obviously we've gone through the history of the Israelite people till this point. We've seen, the start of them. We've seen them going into slavery. We've seen them brought out. We've seen how much duality there is of like doing good things, doing bad things, falling off, like coming back. We've seen things instituted and then them losing the promise. And there was a part that we read, which was just like, it was almost, well, it's not throwaway, but obviously when you're reading so much, it can become a bit throwaway. But I just remember reading something about, it said that he restored the Levites back as priests because they'd gone away and they'd not been priests for, they hadn't really been a priest. And God had restored them to the priesthood. And I was just like, isn't that incredible that for such a long time, they hadn't been a priest, or the priests had just been so like morally bankrupt. That they weren't priests of God anymore. They were priests by position. But part of God's restoration process was he restored their purpose to them of like, no, this is what I've actually this is what I designated you for.
Yeah, good.
And I'm restoring you to that purpose, not the position, but the purpose of what I've called you to. And I was like, that's just great. Do you know what I mean? Like God is way more gracious than we 100%. Are, because we like it happens today all the time. And I think it's part of the debate of how do you manage things that happen. Is a lot of times God's response to people who are repentant is a restoration of their purpose. And sometimes the church is not sure how to handle what that restoration of purpose looks like. And I just think that's an interesting question to have. Because I think God's a lot more gracious than we are.
100%.
Overall, I can say that with confidence. You know what I mean? It's God. So I just think, I think there's so many people where you see that in the Bible, like even someone tragic like Samson, who like he obviously the way he went out wasn't great. Like he wouldn't have imagined like, oh, that's the way I'm gonna go. Like my eyes gouged out, but even in the end, he still had his purpose restored to him. And you have different stories. Like David is a much better example of where he went through ups and downs and still had his purpose restored to him. And I think that God's in the business of restoring purpose. He's not as interested as like restoring like the stuff that we would like to see. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know how that plays out.
Okay, that's gonna be my question.
As far as like the human interaction element.
Yeah.
But what I've seen is that if you're repentant, God is prone to restore purpose rather than to completely eliminate you from what he called you to do. Do you know what I mean? And whether that is the full degree of what you'd experience if you hadn't gone through that is like, it's a bit, sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. Like for example, Samson,
yeah,
I'm sure he would have had way more victories than what he had.
Yeah.
But he, like, in that final moment, he killed more people of the enemy at that point than all the ones put together. Stuff like, do you know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, I think it's just encouraging to know that like God actually does understand us.
Yeah.
And he understands like his standards, although they sound high, they're not actually unrealistic. Like,
yeah.
And that's part of what we explored last week, is that God says, hey, if you mess up, repent.
Yeah.
And I will hold you in my arms. You know what I mean? I'll comfort you.
Yeah.
I'll show you grace. And like you were talking about today, we trust in who he is, not what we've done or not done. And I think that's a comforting thing when, you know, like you said, there's a lot of things going on in the world that is just up in the air. Today I was updating myself on the situation in developing around Ukraine, and there are a lot of moving parts, and all those moving parts could do crazy things in the next few days, weeks, hours, who knows. And so you can look around at that and say, geez, that's what's going on there, like that's insane. Could look at our own country and our own government, be like, every day is a new party. It's like, what's going on? I didn't even know that you could organize that many parties in a row in one area. I was honestly like, come on, guys. Surely your legs are tired. You need some time to recuperate. Or do you know what I mean? You could look at anywhere and just see all this stuff, and it's just like, God, what's going on? But we can trust God because of like who he said he is hasn't changed since he 100%. Spoke to Abraham.
Yeah.
And also, if we mess up, we can know that, all right, he said that I can come to him. So I'm coming to you again, and he's still faithful. That's just great. And we're about to hit Jesus. I mean, we've not even got to the Jesus stuff yet. Yeah.
I think that's good. I think we sort of, someone brought that this morning, didn't they? Well, we were sort of talking about how, you know, it's not too late. God's not done with you yet. And obviously he was using the example of, you know, people who sort of they were somewhere and then something may have happened and they may have fallen back or you know, they may have sort of slowly sort of moved away and things like that. And I think that's one of the things that you see quite a lot, especially sort of in that Old Testament, is no matter where people are at, no matter what's going on, no matter what happens, that ultimately, as you say, in that sort of like Samson, for instance, you know, God sort of restores his purpose of what he was there to do and things like that. And I think, you know, even like David, for instance, you know, David goes and sleeps with that lady and gets her pregnant, and then to hide it, they go and try and, you know, kill the husband by putting him on the front lines or something like that. And it's all a bit mental. But the fact is that, like, you know, in our standards, we would just be like, all right, throw him in the bin, get David out, all this kind of stuff. And you know, probably rightly so in certain circumstances. But ultimately that God is still cares about him, with him. And, you know, if he's repentant and if he is sort of say, okay, look, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that, blah, blah, and he should show true repentance, then there should be some sort of restoration in place, whatever that looks like. I don't know, you know, whatever that. I think there's a lot more questions and a lot more sort of conversations. It's not as simple as just do this and you'll be fine. But and there is a lot more to that. But ultimately, it's encouraging to know that no matter what goes on in our lives or someone that we know, friends, family, whatever, that God is still there. God still cares. God's not done with them. And that when everyone else may sort of just throw them off, or when everyone else has kind of sort of, what's it called, like written them off. That God is still there. God is still able, and God is still cares and wants to pursue that person and see them come to full restoration in what they were called to do, which is great. So yeah, that's solid, that, mate.
Another thing as well that just came to my mind, which like when I listened to it, because I listened to it, I was like, if we like, that's actually such a bad situation. So you've got the people of Israel are in Babylonian captivity because of some of the consequences of them and their kings, etc., etc. And so they're basically all depressed, which makes sense because they know that they've lost. They've lost the presence of God. They've lost the glory of God. The temple's wrecked. Like, they know that they've messed up big time, and so they're in Babylon. They're in Babylon, and they're trying. Like, some of them are trying to carry on in life, but some of them are just like wrecked. And then God sends someone to speak to them, and it's like, look, I'm aware of your situation. I know what's going on, but like, I don't want you to stop living. I want you carry on doing just do the normal stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you plan to get married, get married. Like, for those of you with young kids, don't think that when they grow up they shouldn't get married. Find them someone nice to marry. Let them marry. Find yourself a plot of land. Work the land. Do well. Do you know what I mean? And so, even in a place of like literal bondage, well, not quite. It wasn't quite as. It wasn't like Egypt, but they were still slaves. God spoke to them and gave them purpose again, like in their life, and it may not have been the fullness of the purpose that he was going to bring to them, because later on we see the restoration of the temple happening. But even in where they were at that point in time, he said you can still live a full life. Which when we go through bad things, regardless of what it is, maybe like, I don't know, financial trouble, family trouble, a lot of death going on, or like whatever the bad situation is, whatever the thing is that we feel like I'm enslaved to this situation at the moment, like this situation has just got control of my life. God's word in that is like, you can still have purpose, you can still thrive, you can still, like, all those hopes and dreams that you have, you can still experience them in this moment, which is just like, can you imagine saying that to someone who's like actually like they've lost they used to have a mortgage, the house is gone, they've had to move, they've had to their kids are they've left all their mates at the school. They're in some land they don't know. They don't even speak the language of the people. And then God says, you can still have achieve those dreams that you had before. Like, you can find a new place to live. Like, your kids can have a happy life. Like, that's real. Like, that's real life. Do you know what I mean? Like, we can sometimes distance that, but I just think God's so gracious that even in 100%. Periods of like uncertainty, we can still have hope in him. Do you know what I mean? If we trust in him, as you said today, you should go listen to what he said, because it was great if you haven't. But if you trust in him, like, we can still live in not just in like a hope, but we can actually prosper in the land that we're supposed to die in.
It's good.
That's a nice line. That. Damn. That was that. We can still prosper in the land we're supposed to die in. Just saying that again, because I thought that was a good line. That's it. So this next week, it's going to be slightly less negative perspective. Because we're reaching Jesus. So this is we're taking the bottle off. Like the pressure relief valves, like as we finish off the shred. So let us know if you're going through a plan. How's your plan going? You enjoying it? It doesn't have to be a Bible in a month plan. Could be doing something else. And what we'll do as well, because I don't think we did it at the start, is we'll share a link to where we do the shred. If you want to do it yourself,
that'd be good.
It's on the YouVersion Bible app.
Yep.
So you can go through there. But we'll just encourage you anyway, like find a Bible plan and just go for it.
Yeah.
Especially if you do one that's like a year.
Yeah.
That's like 20 minutes a day.
Yeah, it's not too much.
So yeah. Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah,
if you're joining us live. If you're listening to the podcast version, or maybe you're just watching this back, thank you so much. Thanks for involving us in your day, whatever part of the day you're in, whatever you're doing. Hope you've enjoyed it and been blessed by it. And if there's anything you want us to chat about, delve into, let us know. Next week will be our final shred session.
Yeah. Finishes next Sunday.
Next Sunday is the last day.
Ooh.
I think I'll probably finish it before.
Yeah, I'll do it before.
So we can do the whole thing. So I mean, proper bookend it. Great. Thanks so much, guys. Remember to subscribe if you're watching on YouTube.
Yeah.
And ding the notification bell so you can see when we're going live. If you want to watch us, join us live. Yeah, great. We'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone. Bye.